In honor of Advaitacharya's appearance day, I think it's nice. I'll read something about Advaitacharya. And the introduction to Canto 1, Srimad Bhagavatam, has this biographical sketch about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. So I'm just going to read just a paragraph here and there. From the introduction, Canto 1 Bhagavatam introduction about Advaitacharya. All of Navadvipas are charged with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, and his headquarters were at the house of Srivas Thakur and Sri Advaita Prabhu, two of his chief household disciples. These two learned heads of the Brahmana community were the most ardent supporters of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Sri Advaita Prabhu was the chief cause of the advent of the Lord. Sri Advaita Prabhu saw that the total human society was full of materialistic activities and devoid of devotional service, which alone could save mankind from the threefold miseries of material existence. He, Advaitacharya, out of his causeless compassion for the age-worn human society, prayed fervently for the incarnation of the Lord and continually worshipped the Lord with water of the Ganges and leaves of the holy Tulsi tree. And two more references from the introduction. Page 15 and 16. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, top of page 16, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's chief assistants were Srila Advaita Prabhu and Srila Srivas Thakur, same as mentioned before. But after he accepted the sannyas order, his chief assistants became Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who was deputed to preach specifically in Bengal, and the six Goswamis, Rupa, Sanatan, Jiva, Gopal Bhatta Raghunath Das, and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, headed by Srila Rupa and Sanatana, who were deputed to go to Vrindavan to excavate the present places of pilgrimage. The present city of Vrindavan and the importance of Vrajabhumi were thus disclosed by the will of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord, after accepting the sannyas order, at once wanted to start for Vrindavan. For 3 consecutive days, he traveled in the Radha Desh. We heard that term yesterday evening. The places where the Ganges does not flow. He was in full ecstasy over the idea of going to Vrindavan. However, Srila Nityananda diverted his path and brought him instead to the house of Advaita Prabhu in Shantipur. The Lord stayed at Sri Advaita Prabhu's house for a few days, and knowing well that the Lord was leaving his hearth and home for good, Sri Advaita Prabhu sent his men to Navadvip to bring Mother Sachi to have her last meeting with her son. Some unscrupulous people say that Lord Chaitanya met his wife after taking sannyas and offered her his wooden slipper for worship. But the authoritative sources give no information about such a meeting. His mother met him at the house of Advaita Prabhu, and when she saw her son in sannyas, she lamented. By way of compromise, she requested her son to make his headquarters in Puri so that she would easily be able to get information about him. The Lord granted this last desire of his beloved mother. After this incident, the Lord started for Puri, leaving all the residents of Navadvip in an ocean of lamentation over his separation. Okay, so that's a little snippet from the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're going to Canto 1, Chapter 7, text number 8, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sa Samhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanu Kramya Chatmajam Sukham Adhyapayam Asa Nivritta Niratam Muni Sa Samhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanu Kramya Chatmajam Sukham Atyapayam Asa Nivritta Niratam Nivritti Niratam Munim. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Shukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. This Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas, or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification. But even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad Bhagavatam. Among mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of the compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Controversy. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world as the king of Bharatvarsha, he chastised the personality of Kali according to revealed scriptures and astrological calculation. The age of Kali is in its 5,000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5,000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. That is an estimation of the date of the compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under the instruction of Narada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivritti Marg. The path of Pravritti Marg was condemned by Narada. That path is the natural inclination for all conditioned souls. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence. We'll hear more this evening. I had planned it this way, to discuss more about Advaita Acharya. We just read something before some of you came from the introduction of Canto 1 about the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and some of the same points from yesterday evening about Advaita Acharya and his role in Mahaprabhu's life. So this verse, text number 8, comes after that series of 4 verses of Vyasadev's realization under the instruction of Narada Muni. I said it before, so I'll repeat it. Those several verses, in one sense, hold the essence of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. There are other verses that do the same. 4 other verses that do the same are found in Canto 2, Chapter 9. Chatur Sloki, it's called. 4 essential verses that express the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. These several verses also can be said to express the essence, because it's the realization of Vyasa on the order of Narada to prepare himself to read Srimad Bhagavatam, to write the complete form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the chronology that we're getting in this purport is that before Vyasa wrote Srimad Bhagavatam, he had already compiled the Vedic literatures. That means the one Veda divided into 4 Vedas, Veda Vyasa. He divided the Vedas into 4, and then wrote commentary or histories, the supplementary literature, Prabhupada translates it as the Smritis, to augment the Shrutis, and Mahabharata. So included in the Smritis, includes the Puranas and Itihasas. So included in those Smritis was a synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, it doesn't say specifically the synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was the Chatur Sloki verses. Oh, one could make an argument and say that's what it was. I've heard that argument, but I can't say for sure. But some form of Srimad Bhagavatam that was later expanded into this version. That's what Prabhupada wants us to understand, the chronology. So he had already compiled all the Puranas, and he was still feeling despondent. Now, the Puranas, as frankly, explicitly, with all the Vedas, the purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. So there are references in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are references in the Puranas about the same topics that are in Srimad Bhagavatam. And there are some details in some of those Puranas that are not in Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's quite okay. It doesn't mean they're not right. They're just not in Srimad Bhagavatam. One I came across yesterday in relation to Prahlad Maharaj. In relation to Prahlad Maharaj, there was the same basic storyline. Hiranyakashipu wanted to kill his son but was unable. And one of the verses from Padma Purana, a method that Hiranyakashipu was using to destroy his son, was he had persons with weapons in their hands to attack him with their weapons, deadly weapons. That's not found in the Bhagavatam. And he offered a particular prayer to the Supreme Lord. The particular prayer said, the paraphrasing is not direct translation, but each of those weapons in the hands of those wielding them to kill me, the personality of Godhead is residing within those weapons. So he saw Krishna everywhere. And therefore they will not be able to harm me. And sure enough, they weren't able to harm him. Now, knowing something and experiencing the fruit of that something are different. But he was protected by the Supreme Lord through the medium of this super excellent quality of Prahlad Maharaj to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. This is a detail about the topic for this morning. As we know, there's a key verse, Smartavya Satatam Vishnur Vismartavyo Najatujit. Always remember the Supreme Lord, never forget Him. Sarva Vidhi, all vidhis or regulations in bhakti, are resting upon or pursuing this one thing. Always remember Krishna, so never forget Krishna. So that was Prahlad. He was absorbed in remembrance of the 9 processes. He is the personification of always remembering and never forgetting. So a topmost devotee. Topmost devotee. So that was in Padma Purana, and the Padma Purana and the synopsis of the Bhagavatam were already compiled by Vyas, and then after, that's before this series of verses. Now after this series of verses, he composed the balance, which he then taught to Shukadev. That's just chronology. And as he taught it to Shukadev, who was already, according to the language of the verse, he was already engaged in self-realization, meaning he was already fixed in Brahman conception, which is pretty good, from birth to be a Brahman realized soul. And on top of the Brahman realized soul, it's important that he, the Brahman realized soul, Shukadev, became attracted to the topics of the Bhagavatam, which means what? It's of the same nature as Brahman, and more than simply understanding the impersonal Brahman. The personal feature of Bhagavan is on the platform of Brahman and plus. That's the implication. Our Acharyas, Jiva Goswami in particular, points to this fact in a number of cases, that the Bhagavan conception is superlative, more complete than the Brahman conception, which is transcendental but less complete. So perfect, more perfect, most perfect kind of understanding. The Bhagavan conception being presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. And because Shukadev Goswami heard the entire Srimad Bhagavatam from the one who presented it, who compiled it, his father Vyas, he had realization of the Bhagavan feature. And that's what he spoke to Maharishi Parikshit. And it's an interesting note that Vyasadeva is the writer, and he's writing as if it's not him, but, and then Vyas did this, and then Vyas did that, and then he taught it to his son. But it's him, he's the compiler, the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Another important point is, in comparison to the other portions of the Vedas, where there is strong emphasis, particularly the Karma-kanda section of the Vedas, which is a vast portion of Vedic composition. The Karma-kanda section is a vast portion of the entire Vedas. That gives emphasis to pravriti marg, or the path of progressive material enjoyment, or the path of enjoying in this life an elevation to the heavenly realm and enjoying even more. So persons are interested in that, enjoying and enjoying more and enjoying more. So the Vedas give a system where one can enjoy and enjoy more and enjoy more. But it's all temporary. The enjoyment is temporary, the elevation is temporary, and therefore it's not recommended. And therefore, although Vyas did a perfect job in compiling the rest of the Vedas, he wasn't satisfied because it didn't give what he as an author wanted to give. It was perfectly correct. It was Vedic. There was no error. But it was incomplete. And the more complete or complete form is nivriti. So pravriti, the path of progressive material enjoyment. Nivriti, the path of progressively decreasing, diminishing one's involvement in those objects of sense enjoyment for the purpose of sense enjoyment. Pravriti is there for gradual purification. That's the ultimate or higher purpose. Some persons don't look at the higher purpose, they just look at the gratification purpose. Theistic enjoyment. Prospering with authority. And that's better than trying to prosper without authority, because that's atheistic. So the theist, follower of the Vedas, may want that. And there's some persons that want that. There's more persons that want that than persons that want nivriti, progressive, diminishing. Yesterday verse was complete eradication, not just diminishing. Complete eradication of the unwanted features of material enjoyment. What were those three? Shoka, moha, and bhaya. So that's the product of material enjoyment. The Bhagavatam relieves one completely from those unwanted miseries, which means it also relieves one completely from the progressive material enjoyment, which means it's, by default, it's the nivriti path. And the statement is in the purport, this nivriti path is for the Paramahamsas. Like yesterday, we saw a nice painting of Madhavendra Puri, and he was on the Paramahamsa stage of sannyas. And there's 4 stages, technically. 1, 2, 3, 4, and he was on the 4th step. And there was a certain lifestyle that he followed because of, or not because of being, but as a byproduct of his being, in that Paramahamsa stage, and that was for sustaining the body. He didn't do anything. If he was hungry, he wouldn't go ask for alms. But if someone came to give him something, he would accept. And of course, he would accept only those things that are acceptable. He wouldn't accept other things. That is to say, in contrast, there's a similar discipline amongst Buddhists, and they accept whatever. Unmentionables and mentionables, they accept whatever. It's just part of a principle of that kind of detachment, because there's not attachment to Krishna. So anyway, back when there's in the Paramahansa stage, which Madhavendra Puri was situated on, that was his maintenance. And similarly, Sukadeva Goswami was on this completely detached platform, but hearing from his father, from Srimad Bhagavatam, he became enriched beyond that neutrality stage to the attraction to Krishna stage. Spiritual attraction, material detachment. It's a very important Vaishnava principle. The Vaishnava principle, the non-Vaishnava principle is Jnana Vairagya. The Vaishnava principle is Yukta Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment. Those who have knowledge, transcendental knowledge, Gyan, there's a byproduct of Gyan, and that is detachment from the material. Knowledge and detachment it's a couplet within the Vedic paradigm. And Yukta Vairagya is the Vaishnava principle that Mahaprabhu taught. By engaging everything, so we have a nice camera, spiffy TV screen, the sound system that sometimes works. We have things of this world. And to use the things of this world in service of the Supreme, the source of these things, that's Yukta Vairagya. And then there isn't attachment to a sense of being the enjoyer, but we want a nice system because it's for service to Krishna. So it's important to have a nice system because it's in service to Krishna. Just a little sharing. Some of you may know this. In the Vedic calendar, Vasant Panchami is an important day. And it signifies, one of the things it signifies is a change of seasons. There's 6 seasons in Vedic calendar. One of them is spring, so Vasant is spring. Vasant Panchami marks the transition from the previous season to the next season. So, most of you know that. In China, they have a similar festival. Big festival called the Spring Festival. What the language is in Chinese, I don't know, but it's English. It's Spring Festival, and they celebrate the transition from winter to summer, to winter to spring. So there's similarity with their calendar, Chinese calendar, and Vedic calendar, similarity Vedic calendar and Chinese calendar, but there's a big difference. Big difference. There's Radha and Krishna art in the center in China. Spring Festival. No Radha Krishna. And then there's the Vedic system where there's other things, just like at Northeastern, the Saraswati Puja, Spring Festival, worship Saraswati. What does Saraswati do? She gives knowledge. Spring Festival, worship Saraswati. But somebody sent me a photograph of the deities of Radha Shyamasundar in Vrindavan, and Radharani is holding the same instrument that Saraswati holds. I'll circulate it, and you can circulate it to others. And so, because who is Saraswati anyways? She's an expansion of Radharani. So it's just elevating things to the Radha and Krishna at the center platform. Vasant Panchami. Or anything. Or Spring Festival. With Radha and Krishna at the center. So that's the Bhagavatam. That's what the Bhagavatam does in comparison to, or in contrast to, the rest of the Vedas. The Vedas are pursuing the same thing. Less directly. Which Vyasadeva compiled properly, but wasn't satisfied with. So on the one hand and on the other hand. On the one hand, there's an advantage, big advantage, that people that have birth in India or their parentage, their lineage comes from India, they've got a head start on everybody else because they have at least a snapshot of the Vedic model that they've grown up with and have faith in. Unfortunately, much of it is distorted. Unfortunately, much of it is distorted. There aren't qualified persons to explain how to do this or how to do that, what to speak of do it, and what to speak of the purpose behind it. So that's the disadvantage. And then they become attached to this or that distortion, and that's it. And then there's the rest of us that don't have that paradigm. No, spring is a nice season. It snowed on it's on Panchami. Somehow the guys upstairs didn't get the signal. But Vasant Panchami. But Radha Krishna in the center. So it's easy. There's a disadvantage and an advantage. To be in ignorance is a disadvantage. It's also an advantage. The slate is more clean rather than cluttered. And then being attached to something that I have to grow from this to go to that. Anyway, advantages, disadvantages. The transcendental message isn't dependent upon anything. Ahoituki apratiyata. So back to the Bhagavatam purport, Nivritti Marg is the path that's encouraged, or the foundation of the whole Bhagavatam. So back to this Paramahansa Samhita. This Srimad Bhagavatam is a Paramahansa Samhita. It's not in this verse, but it's spoken elsewhere. It's a Samhita, it's a scriptural text for Paramahansas. So who amongst us are Paramahansas? Therefore, what Prabhupada is writing in the purport, although it is especially meant for Paramahansas, or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are engaged in sense gratification, but even such men will find in this Vedic literature, Bhagavatam, a remedial measure for their material diseases. That was the previous verse. Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul. See, he was already on the Paramahansa state platform. It was easy for him. But some persons who are on the Paramahansa platform, it's not easy for them. It bounces because they're attached to another conception. And they don't have Vyasadeva as their father. Or someone who can present the conclusion in a proper way. Coming up is Ramanujacharya's disappearance day. Very soon coming up. So I did a little research on his biography specific to his departure. And one of the details in his departure was one of his celebrated followers approached him and made a request. At some point in time, you're not going to be physically with us. May we have a permission to make a murti, a deity of you in your likeness, so that after you've departed, we can remember you and so forth. So Ramanuja said, okay. So this person that asked this, sent a sculptor who studied his physiognomy and started down the process of making a murti of Ramanujacharya. And transcendentally speaking, Ramanujacharya took it that this is now the time for my departure. So he did several things. There was Parashara Bhattair, who became popularly known as Bhattair, and he recognized him as his successor. And so he, Ramanujacharya, made arrangements for his education by a very qualified Sri Vaishnava to teach him this and that and the other thing and the other thing. And he, Ramanujacharya, went with Bhattair to Ranganath, the deity, and made arrangements that Ranganath would give his prasad and some other ritual that's done by Sri Vaishnavas first to Bhattair before Ramanujacharya. So it was an explicit act to say without, in a ritual form, this is my successor. And then he retired to a quiet place, and everyone understood he's leaving, he's going to leave us. So he went through the exercise of giving final instructions to those dear and near to him, and so forth and so on. The punchline I'm forgetting now. In this whole narration. Bhattair was given an instruction by Ramanujacharya. There's a priest from a different persuasion of teaching who's assistant to the king or chief priest of the king. Go to this kingdom, take that particular person who is a direct disciple of a very prominent other teaching personality, and persuade him to accept Sri Vaishnavism. And so he did. But it's not everybody that's fully dedicated to spiritual practices of one kind or another that they're going to be ready to accept Vaishnavism of any kind, that they're going to go from a Paramahansa stage to a Vaishnava stage. So therefore, the Paramahansa has to have an adjective, a qualifier. Vaishnava Paramahansa is different than the other kind, and not all other kinds are ready for Vaishnava Paramahansa realization. But Ramanujacharya had the acumen to understand, here is a qualified person. He just grew up in a different line or teaching, and take this teaching, you're equipped now. So it was just part of what he was doing, Ramanuja was doing, and what he wanted his successor to do. It's a little bit like what Prabhupada wanted us to do, although we're not qualified. He wanted us to do it anyways. And by taking the service of taking the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and propagating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, we can similarly become more qualified than unqualified, although we're unqualified. We don't have the qualifications. Become qualified by taking up the service that's wanted, and in our case, by ultimately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Or one can say Krishna. Sarvadharmam parijyaja mami. So take that teaching and bring it into the life of people that aren't qualified. And it will help make us qualified, although we're not qualified. This is just a continuation of that little discussion yesterday on the topic of Srivas Thakur. And in the beginning of the kirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the house of Srivas Thakur, Srivas Pandit, the gates were locked. Qualified persons only. And then, that the incubation of the ecstatic kirtan went on, and then after some time the gates went open and it went out into the public. And that's the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sankirtan movement that we're part of. The unqualified can become qualified by mercy. The unqualified can become qualified. So that's similar to what's here in this purport. The Bhagavatam is a Paramahansa literature, but persons who are not Paramahansas can also become eligible to progress to very elevated stages of Krishna Bhakti, or realization of the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. It takes a while, but the principle is there. And thus the propagation of Srimad Bhagavatam is so important. Our doing it ourselves and involving others to do the same, which makes us more eligible to understand the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so that's it for this morning. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. First, just one clarification. So Saraswati Devi is expansion of Srimati Radharani. And whose consort, who is her husband?
You know. There's the, what's the right word? Prototype is the word. Saraswati, even before Brahma makes his appearance, because Brahma received Gayatri from Saraswati. That's the prototype Saraswati. And then the manifestation of Saraswati, prototype, became the wife of Lord Brahma. And that prototype Saraswati is a direct manifestation of Radharani. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. Maharaj, my second question was Vyasadev's dissatisfaction. So I was thinking, the devotees like Vyasadev, they're so realized. The quality of their dissatisfaction also will be...
It's a transcendental dissatisfaction.
Yeah. I was just reflecting on the dissatisfaction that we feel in our life.
That's not transcendental.
So mixed. So the question is how to even pick and choose the right dissatisfaction which is aligned to, one can get very morose and depressed because they're dissatisfied.
Well, that's yesterday's verse, Shokamohabhaya. You, me, all of us, make our connection with, your husband brought it up at the very end of class. There's a transcendental experience of those things, and we're not there. So how to get there? There's the method that was yesterday, and then when you're there, it's that from which this reflection comes.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. The demigods are all positions.
What?
The demigods
The demigods
are all positions, right?
are also what?
Positions where
They're
the
positions.
jivas
The
can.
persons occupy them, yeah.
Yeah. So Brahma is also a position where it is occupied.
Yes, he's not always, it's not in every universe it's the same Brahma. Or in all the different cycles of the universes, it's the same Brahma. It's a post.
Okay. So my question is the Saraswati a position in as a wife Brahma or
There's the prototype and there's the position.
okay, so this is a position. Brahma's wife is a position.
Yeah.
Okay. So
You want to be Saraswati?
no. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki? Right.
Oh, there is a question on the online.
Okay, online question. Let's hear it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, can we become attracted to the melody given by previous acharyas while singing the holy name, or we should just focus on chanting the holy names?
The second one, not to the exclusion of the first one. Don't become attracted to a melody without attraction to the sound vibration of the mantra, but become attracted to the sound vibration of mantra, and there's so many melodies. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much.